Good evening, it's 8 o'clock. The top headlines tonight. Well, with inflation up, the RBI chooses to hike repo rates after 4 years. With lending rates going up, your EMIs are set to go up too. And the bad news is that the RBI governor said food inflation will continue to rise and fuel hikes is also feeding into core inflation. India is not an island in a globally connected world, Mr. Das says. India's biggest IPO opened today. LIC 67% subscribed. LIC policy holders are the maximum subscribers today. There's still some gaps in big investors. Prime Minister Modi and Nordic Prime Ministers hold a summit today. The Nordic Prime Ministers called for an immediate end to the Russia war. India also backs a statement asking for cessation of hostilities. Prime Minister Modi will meet France's Macron later tonight. Loudspeakers off at many mosques in Maharashtra this morning. The police force out in full strength. Mumbai is peaceful. The Sena said that because of Raj Thackeray, temple loudspeakers were also put off. Meanwhile, with Raj's sound and fury, is he now becoming a BJP proxy versus his cousin, Chief Minister Thackeray and the state government? Curfew still on for the second day in Jodhpur after Eid clashes with the internet suspended. 100 people have now been detained and 13 FIRs filed in these clashes.
With the sentiments of the Congress workers and being a member of Parliament led by the Indian National Congress.
Go back Chidambaram. Congress lawyers take on senior Congress leader P. Chidambaram in the Calcutta High Court. Mr. Chidambaram was appearing for the accused in a case filed by the state Congress chief Adhir Rangan Chaudhary. Bengal Congress lawyers say Chidambaram is backing Mamata Banerjee. 1 year later, COVID anniversaries mingled with the memories is grief and anger. Our special report. The US Supreme Court is likely to rule against abortion rights, says a draft leaked from the President of America to abortion activists. There is outrage. And Twitter's new owner, Elon Musk, hints that Twitter may not be free any longer for everybody. All the latest from what Musk said at the Met Gala. Our lead story tonight, markets have tanked over 2% after the RBI stunned today with a surprise rate hike announcement. The RBI governor, Mr. Shaktikant Das, announced the raising of the key lending rate by 4 basis points to 4.40%. The RBI lending rate has been hiked for the first time since August 2018 and came as inflation continued spiraling upwards. The RBI has also raised the cash reserve ratio by 50 basis points to 4.5%. That's to ensure liquidity in banks. So the hike in the CRR reflects liquidity being taken out from the system. Also, the Sensex has slid by 1,306 points, ending at 55,669. The Nifty also falling 391 points. All sectors today ended in the red, including realty and metal shares.
Tormented by rising inflation? Your household expenses are likely to rise even further, the RBI has warned.
To increase the policy repo rate by 40 basis points to 4.40%.
In a surprise move, it increased the main interest rate from 4% to 4.4%, which is the repo rate at which RBI lends to banks.
It is, however, important to recognize that despite our strengths and our buffers, India is not an island in this globally connected world. There are spikes in headline CPI inflation in March 2022 as anticipated in the MPC statement of April. The print for April is also expected to be elevated.
The rate has been stable at 4% since May 2020. In a similar emergency announcement, the RBI had then cut the key lending rate from 4.4% to 4% in May, in response to a global economic standstill caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. The first hike in 4 years comes in the backdrop of soaring inflation. Retail inflation has remained above the RBI's target for the last 3 months. It neared 7% in March, a 17-month high. The RBI hopes to tame inflation with this rate hike. Governor Shaktikanta Das warned that inflation is likely to intensify in April and said that food prices will continue to rise given global commodity price shocks triggered by the Russia-Ukraine war. Virtually on cue but unrelated, another worrying forecast. The Food Secretary told NDTV that they expect less wheat production than initially expected, down by as much as 5.4%.
एग्रीकल्चर डिपार्टमेंट के हिसाब से पहले 1110 लाख मीट्रिक टन का उनका ओरिजिनल एस्टिमेट था, जो उन्होंने रिवाइज करके 1050 लाख मीट्रिक टन किया है.
करीब 5% कम हुई है.
करीब 60 लाख मीट्रिक टन का रिडक्शन.
But it's not just food. The central bank said that domestic hikes in fuel prices are also intensifying inflationary pressures.
The direct impact of increases in domestic pump prices of petroleum products beginning the second fortnight of March is feeding into core inflation prints and is expected to have intensified in April.
The opposition and some experts say the onus is now on the government to cut tax on fuel.
It is possible for the government to bring down inflation. That if the government was to reduce taxes on diesel and petrol and on CNG, it would reduce inflation rate without any intervention by the RBI.
What does the RBI's move mean for the common man? EMIs are likely to rise if banks follow suit and hike the interest rate on your home loan or vehicle loan. With Panchami Warrior in Delhi, Anasya Mathur for NDTV.
And for the government, another big day financially because India's biggest IPO of the Life Insurance Corporation of India went on sale today to the public. It was subscribed fully by policyholders of LIC, but still some gaps from big investors.
LIC agents and policyholders signing up for shares on day one of India's biggest IPO to date. The most enthusiastic response has been from them. Each share is 902 to 949 rupees with a total of 21,000 crore worth on offer.
We have seen a good response for this IPO of LIC. A lot of people are wishing to apply for this IPO as retail individual investors and as well as they are wanting to invest being a policy holder.
मैं LIC का होल्डर हूँ और मुझे जो है फर्स्ट टाइम हम ये भर रहे हैं IPO, तो मुझे ये डिस्काउंट रेट पे मिलना चाहिए. मेरे को दिक्कत आ रही है इसमें, आसपास तो हम इजीली भर लेते थे पर ऑनलाइन भरने में हमें बहुत सी दिक्कतें आ रही हैं इसमें.
With over 22 crore shares up for grabs, the LIC IPO was most enthusiastically received by policyholders and employees. The portion set aside for the two groups was oversubscribed on day one. The IPO also received a good response from anchor investors earlier. The group fully subscribed to its portion, raising over 5,600 crores. On the other side, the portions reserved for institutional buyers, retail and non-institutional investors were not fully subscribed. Policyholders get a 60 rupee discount while employees get a discount of 45 rupees per share. The government hopes to raise a total of 21,000 crore by selling a 3.5% stake in LIC. The issue size is down from the 5% the government had planned earlier. However, the government's move has been criticized by some experts and the opposition. They question why was the offer size reduced to 21,000 crore and what took so long that the IPO has missed the high point of the stock market and has lost a lot of revenue with this delay. In recent years, data shows the government's disinvestment record has been poor with targets missed by a wide margin. But the IPO wasn't welcomed by all. LIC employees continued their protest against the IPO, which they call the first step towards privatizing LIC.
Today we are registering our protest against the policies of the government because this IPO is going to be detrimental to the interests of the policyholders and to the detriment of the interests of the Indian economy and the public at large. In turn will result in the reduction of income to the government exchequer.
LIC has been a household name in India for years, but it has hit the markets at an exceptionally volatile time. Priyanshi Sharma for NDTV.
Let's go across the other big headline, the Prime Minister's summit with all the Nordic Prime Ministers today. It's interesting, of course, to see a majority of the Nordic Prime Ministers are women, and he's now left Denmark, heading for France, where he will be the first foreign leader to meet French President Macron after his re-election. So, Vishnu, what's really the highlights of the Nordic summit?
Very young women leaders as well, some under 40, one of them 44 years of age. So very young leaders over there that the Prime Minister engaged in. But this is interesting because in perhaps the sharpest criticism of the war in Ukraine, in a multilateral setting, as you can see the Prime Minister meeting several leaders, India has joined the Prime Ministers of Iceland, Sweden, Norway, Finland and Denmark in unequivocally condemning civilian deaths in Ukraine. At the same time, Delhi has stopped short of outright condemning the unlawful and unprovoked aggression against Ukraine by Russian forces. So, Delhi threading a fine line, but progressively being more critical of the role of Russia in the invasion of Ukraine. So let me explain how. The joint statement says the Nordic Prime Ministers, not India, reiterated their strong condemnation of the unlawful and unprovoked aggression against Ukraine by Russian forces. As you can see, India is not mentioned here, even though this is a joint statement, just the Nordic Prime Ministers, but India's name not here. However, India does join the Nordic leaders in, let's just bring up the next point, in stating, and this is also there, that they unequivocally condemned civilian deaths in Ukraine. They reiterated the need for an immediate cessation of hostilities. They emphasized that the contemporary global order has been built on the UN Charter, international law, respect for sovereignty and territorial integrity. Again, it's interesting that India should mention the UN Charter, they should mention territorial integrity. But at the UN itself, India never voted against Russia on issues pertaining to Ukraine. So India again continues to thread a fine line on its Ukraine policy. It boils down to a choice of just a few words.
Thanks so much, Vishnu. But let's just look at the other updates back here in Maharashtra, which is also treading a very fine line today after the whole political bluster over loudspeakers by MNS leader Raj Thackeray, cousin, of course, of Chief Minister Uddhav Thackeray. Well, the day went off largely peacefully. Raj Thackeray was confined to his home. But the fact remains that in many mosques and temples, there were no loudspeakers used this morning.
Maharashtra was largely peaceful today, with the only police action being taken against a few people who threatened an agitation against loudspeakers at mosques. The agitation was called by MNS Chief Raj Thackeray, who is the Chief Minister's estranged cousin. And Sandeep Deshpande, MNS leader, tried escaping while coming out of Raj Thackeray's home this morning. As his car sped away, a lady police constable was injured. Across the state, about 300 MNS leaders were taken into preventive custody overnight. Most mosques across the state avoided the morning azan on loudspeakers, say the police, and even temples avoided the morning aarti. MNS workers tried to play the Hanuman Chalisa on loudspeakers in the Kandivali area of Mumbai and in Nashik, but were stopped by the police. A defiant Raj Thackeray alleged mosques using loudspeakers for a call to prayer is contempt of court. He also tweeted an old video of Sena Patriarch and the Chief Minister's father Balasaheb Thackeray saying, if the Sena forms government, loudspeakers will be removed. The competitive Hindutva politics is playing out ahead of the civic body elections in the state, especially the all-important BMC elections, India's richest municipal corporation, and a prestige battle for the Shiv Sena.
मैं पूछ रहा हूं महाराष्ट्र की पुलिस को इन 135 मस्जिदों के ऊपर आप कौन सी कार्रवाई करने वाले हैं? आप हमारे कार्यकर्ताओं को पकड़ रहे हैं और इनके ऊपर कौन सी कार्रवाई कर रहे हैं?
राज ठाकरे जी का इस्तेमाल करके ये लोग हिंदू में झगड़े लगाना चाहते हैं.
A massive deployment, preventive detentions, notices and an alert police force means that the state administration was able to avoid the law and order situation it had anticipated. But with the defiant Raj Thackeray threatening to keep his agitation going, the state administration will have to be prepared for future flare-ups with civic body elections around the corner. In Mumbai with camera person Sanjay Mandal, Saurabh Gupta, NDTV.
In Jodhpur, also an uneasy calm today with the curfew continuing and the internet still suspended. This a day after Eid clashes. The BJP today walked out of a peace committee meeting saying the investigation was biased. Meanwhile, 13 FIRs have been registered and over 100 people have been detained.
Jodhpur's Jalori Gate area, where two communities have always lived in close proximity. The clashes on Tuesday have left many with a sense of unease.
हाथ में डंडे थे, रॉड थे, सिरिये थे, सब कुछ थे। अपना घर पे क्या सीसीटीवी लगा हुआ है सारा। ये गाड़ी को है ना, हाथ में जो भी था सामान उससे गाड़ी का आगे इसको डेंट किया, इस गाड़ी को डेंट किया। ठीक है।
तो कैसे वार किया? मतलब आपको लगा कि पहले से उनके पास प्रिपेयर्ड था?
प्रिपेयर्ड हो गया है। वो पहले से ही, और सब जन ऐसे नहीं है, मैं ऐसा नहीं कर रहा हूँ, सब जन ऐसे है। वो जो भी थे 40-50 जन है, वो प्रिपेयर्ड हो गया है, उसमें छोटे बच्चे भी थे, सब कुछ थे।
ये प्री प्लान भी हो सकता है, किसी चंद मुट्ठी भर लोग हैं, चाहे इधर से भी हो चाहे उधर से भी हो, पर चंद मुट्ठी भर लोगों का काम है।
Many homes here have CCTVs fitted on their entrances, and it is this footage that is now helping the police to identify and round up suspects. So far, over 100 people have been detained for Tuesday's violence and 13 FIRs filed for clashes.
वीडियो फुटेज दूसरे कोई चीजें हैं जिसमें आरोप प्रत्यारोप से ऊपर उठ के हम निर्दोष को बाहर करें, और जो मुलजिम हैं वो चाहे किसी जाति से हो, उनके खिलाफ सख्त से सख्त कार्रवाई हो।
These CCTV shots, for example, show a mob led by young boys in their teens rushing out on the road armed with sticks. They damage scooters parked outside homes and also try and damage a place of worship. A handful of policemen on duty watch helplessly as the mob runs riot. The BJP has alleged that the government was not prepared for mobs like these who indulged in stone pelting and roamed the streets armed with sticks.
इसका प्रिकॉशन लेना, इसकी तैयारी करना, इसकी व्यवस्था करना लाजमी था, प्रशासन को करनी चाहिए और प्रशासन चूक गया।
But Jodhpur is not an isolated incident. In fact, it is the third such incident of communal clashes in Rajasthan in just 1 month. As the police begin to arrest and round up those involved in the clashes in Jodhpur, in the political rhetoric, it's important to untangle the threads. On the government's part, there appears to have been no forewarning of the fault lines on the ground. But the opposition too seems unwilling to give peace a chance. They walked out of the peace committee meeting held by the district administration and raised slogans. Clearly, political temperatures in Rajasthan are set to rise. With camera person Xavier Thomas in Jodhpur, Harsha Kumari Singh, NDTV.
Well, moving to other news, and these are rare scenes where you saw lawyers affiliated to the Congress in the Calcutta High Court actually heckling senior leader P. Chidambaram, who was there to represent Caventer's an agro-processing firm in a case filed against the Trinamool Congress and Caventer's by the state Congress chief, Adhir Ranjan Chaudhary. Let's just listen to what these angry lawyers affiliated to the Congress said to Mr. Chidambaram.
Don't tell me you're through the mouth of us. You are playing with the sentiments of the Congress workers. And being a member of parliament, run by the National Congress. Because of you people, because of certain persons like you, that the party is not being able to stand up. It's just because of leaderships like you. This is something which has not been done by you. They have looked at public money and you are saving Trinamool Congress. It's because of you. It's just because of leaders like you that we are suffering in West Bengal.
So complete outrage there in the West Bengal unit of the Congress. There's been no response from Mr. Chidambaram yet, but of course he's appearing there as a lawyer on a brief. But the issue here, of course, is that the state Congress chief has filed this PIL. Meanwhile, let's just go to what is really our special report. It's been 1 year since that COVID hell India lived through. And across the country, families are marking the 1-year death anniversaries of their loved ones. We bring you an insight into what the lives are of those left behind.
For 36-year-old Ravi Chawla, life will never be the same. Even in his worst nightmares, he never imagined the devastation COVID would bring in his life. Ravish and his wife, Dr. Dimple, were expecting for their second child. when Dimple tested positive after a small family function.
She was the most cautious person in our house, like not only giving mask and everything to us, but also everyone around in a family as well. Even I had mentioned it last year also. She even used to go. She was so cautious that sometime when the first COVID wave struck, so she used to go to markets wearing a PPE.
Ironically, Dr. Dimple put out a video message to family and friends, urging them not to take the deadly virus lightly.
ये वीडियो बना रही हूँ बहुत मुश्किल से. I really want to tell each and everyone जो मुझे जानता है, please don't take corona so lightly. Very bad symptoms. I am not able to speak, but I really want to convey my message to all.
She was a very strong woman. I think, because it was around the Mother's Day that I had posted that message. I usually refrain from doing, but yeah, I got, it was something came out. I wanted to pay a tribute to her. She had recorded that message for her family, and though I had to post it because she was an epitome of motherhood. I sincerely say that every mother takes care of her child. Every mother takes care of her child, but she was a mother who went with her unborn child to the heavens. I say to this.
Dr. Dimple Chawla passed away on 26th April, leaving behind a small 4-year-old child in the care of her husband.
The scene is fresh in my eyes. I can still visualize it to this day. We may be, standing tall, putting up a brave face to the world. When somebody calls friends and family, "Kya haal hai?" The automatic answer is "theek hai." But what can we say? I still believe it's a dream that we are living, and someday I'll wake up and it will be all right. But no, it's not so.
In New Delhi, with camera person Ashok Mahale, Akshay Dongre for NDTV.
A year later, the grief remains, and really that same grief shared by so many millions and lakhs of families across India at this time, this very difficult time for all of them. Well, we'll just have a quick look at some other news this evening across the north at least, and in Delhi as well. Dust storm, hailstorm and rain bringing some much needed relief. So lovely to see that rain there on streets which are over 44 degrees, touching 45 degrees just a few days ago. So as the Met Department predicted, there's no heat wave for the next 2-3 days. Let's wait and see what happens next week. Divya has the latest on what to look forward to or not look forward to.
Temperatures have started to normalize in the northern part of the country with no heat wave conditions prevailing at the moment. No change expected as far as the temperatures are concerned. They will remain close to normal over the next 2 days. As far as central India is concerned, the temperatures will rise by almost 2 to 3 degrees. When we talk about the hottest part of the country, that happens to be Vidarbha, Telangana and East Madhya Pradesh, where the temperatures ranging between 42 to about 44 degrees Celsius. The heat wave conditions are likely to make a comeback to central India from tomorrow, with heat wave conditions expected to make a comeback as far as the northwest plains are concerned from the 6th of May. Heat wave conditions at the moment are prevailing in Madhya Maharashtra, likely to continue tomorrow as well, with heat wave conditions expected in Vidarbha from the 5th of May till about the 8th. Heat wave conditions will be felt in parts of West Rajasthan as well as Madhya Pradesh from the 6th of this month till about the 8th, with heat wave conditions expected in Uttar Pradesh and East Rajasthan on the 7th as well as the 8th of May. Now, a low pressure area is likely to intensify into a depression over Andaman Sea, so that's going to bring about heavy rainfall around the 6th of May in parts of Andaman and Nicobar Islands and the southern part of the country.
Thanks so much, Divya, for that update on the weather. But let's go across to what's the big international story in the United States, and that's a leaked draft of what a possible US Supreme Court ruling is going to be on abortion rights. It's led to outrage from the President of the United States to pro-abortion activists.
If we don't
Over 1,000 demonstrators gathered in New York to protest the possibility of the US Supreme Court overturning Roe versus Wade, which has guaranteed the right to abortion for nearly half a century. This means tens of millions of women in America are on the verge of losing access to abortion.
It is not in the hands of the United States Supreme Court. It's in our hands.
It concerns me a great deal that we're going to, after 50 years, decide a woman does not have a right to choose within the limits of the Supreme Court decision in cases. Number one. But even more, equally as profound is the rationale used. And it would mean that every other decision relating to the notion of privacy is thrown into question.
US Vice President Kamala Harris said that the potential Supreme Court decision represents an attack on women and lashed out at Republicans for weaponizing the issue. If Roe versus Wade is overturned, women living in states where abortions are banned might need to travel lengthy distances to receive treatment in another state. That's if they can even afford to do so. Liberals now warn that gay marriage, contraception, and other rights rooted in a long-established constitutional protection for privacy could also be threatened.
The final opinion in the Supreme Court case isn't expected to be published until late June. Votes and language can therefore change before opinions are formally released. But overturning the Roe versus Wade could completely shake up midterm elections in the United States in November. Parmeshwar Bava for NDTV.
And the other big story coming out of the United States, the new Twitter owner, of course, the deal is being made final. Elon Musk has said that Twitter will always be free for casual users, but maybe a slight cost for commercial and government users is coming up. Let's see how the stock markets react. But first, of course, what Elon Musk said in his first public appearance after that controversial takeover.
Well, it does get to me sometimes. I mean, I'm not like, I do have feelings on Android. I think one has to take these things with, a grain of salt. We have to get rid of the bots and trolls and the scams and everything, because that's obviously diminishing the user experience, and we don't want people getting tricked out of their money and that kind of thing. So I'm definitely on the warpath. So if somebody's operating a bot and troll on me, I'm definitely their enemy. I think aesthetics are important, and I just followed the sort of basic instructions on them. So I think I sort of look like I'm from Downton Abbey or something.